Welcome to So Much More's first block of the month tutorial. This is the block we're working on. It's Lori Holt fabric. It's gorgeous. And so we will be going over how to do a little bit of cutting and construction. Before we get started, let me point out our color coding system. So on your pattern, you'll see that DNA is our background. It's the beige. This fabric is F. This one is G, C and H. Up here, this is B. This is labeled B on your pattern, and this one is E. That's your color coding for your pattern. Now let me show you what you're going to get out of your packet that Jessica gives you. This background fabric, you're going to get a larger piece of background, and it's labeled A, and you're going to cut 8 2-inch squares out of A. Then you're going to look over at B, and you have a long strip, and with B you're going to cut 4 2-inch squares. And C, you have another long strip. Now C, you're going to get 4 2-inch by 4.5-inch pieces. You're going to do 4 of those, 2-inch by 4.5. When you get to D, it's another background fabric, and you're going to cut out 2 3-inch squares. Be careful not to mix up A and D. D gets your 2 3-inch squares. And then E, of course, you're going to get 4 3.5-inch squares out of that one. 4 3.5 out of this one. And we're not done. We have more. It's collapsing. And then we have F, your teal fabric, and you're going to get 2 3-inch squares out of that. With H, you're going to get 4 2-inch squares. And G, you're going to cut out 4 2-inch by 4.5 inches squares out of these. So that's your cutting. Okay. So we're going to begin with the center of our block, which is a pinwheel. It consists of 4 half square triangles. So let's look to see what that looks like. Now you're going to get you're going to get a 3-inch block and a background 3-inch block. You're going to put them right sides together, and then you're going to draw a line from corner to corner, and that will be a guide. You're not going to sew on this. As we discussed on Saturday Sampler, we said everything needs to be a scant 1/4 of an inch. Never do it right on the 1/4 of an inch, because it just takes up so much of your seam allowance that pretty soon you'll have a 10-inch block and not a 10.5-inch block. So we're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch, a scant 1/4 of an inch, on both sides of this line that we drew. There's one, and now I'm going to draw I'm going to sew on the other side of then. It can be even, we're going to trim this up so it doesn't even have to be, it can be even less than a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, now once that's done, and you can see it's very narrow. It's not, I mean, it's a scant. Let me put it that way. The first thing I'm going to do is cut right up this line that I drew, and then I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to iron it to the dark side. So now be careful when you're ironing that you do not stretch your fabric, and it just more press than iron away. So again, I'm gonna press this toward the dark, gently, no stretching. And so you are ready to trim. Now we are going to trim this down to 2.5 inches. You need a ruler that has a nice 45-degree angle here. So I'm going to set that line, that 45-degree angle, right on the line of my little block. And I've got to make sure that everything is within, you know, that 2.5 that I want to end up with. So I want to get it just right on. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim it this way. And this way. I'm going to turn my block. You can see how nicely that came to a point. Both fabrics came to a real exact point. So I will go now, and I'm going to look for the 2.5-inch mark on this side to make sure that what I end up with is exactly a 2.5-inch block. But I want to make sure, once again, that the 45-degree line is right down the middle of this block. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and trim that. And you can see that's a nice, accurate 2.5-inch half square triangle. I need 4 of these, so I'm going to do them 4 more times. So here are my 4 half square triangles. And now I'm going to put this together, these 4, and make a pinwheel. So I will set them out so it's in the right configuration. Okay, so there they are, your 4 half square triangles. I'll pick this up and I'm going to flip it over. And because I ironed all of them to the dark side, I can easily nest those 2, because this is where it's really important to nest those 2 and get those exactly. Okay, go. If you're concerned about this moving around, go ahead and put a little pin right here. Just, you can also feel that it's nesting and in the appropriate place. All right, so I'm getting ready to sew a scant 1/4 inch. And see, I'm using this red line as my scant 1/4 inch. I'm always going to be sewing to the left of it. Or actually it's this line, but it's...
Okay.
And that's how this is. You want to make sure when everything is said and done that you have a 1/4 inch right here. That's where your seam allowance, your other pieces will come together. But that looks nice. I would suggest just be consistent. I'm going to turn this over and I will just iron it to the dark side again. And I will do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that this is nested as nice and snugly, as tightly as I can. And then once again, I'm going to do my scant 1/4 inch. Okay. Now with this half square triangle sewed to this one and this to this, I am ready to make my pinwheel. So I am going to turn this over, and again, these seams are going to be going the opposite direction. They're going to be nesting nice and tightly. So just make sure, and if you need to pin it, you go right ahead, and just to make sure that they stay right nested just like you need them to. Okay, now I'm ready to sew my scant 1/4 inch. Okay, let's see how we did. This is the moment of truth. This is what's challenging, is to get these all to, see, I'm off a wee bit, just a little bit. And so it's just hard to get those, because you were talking, there's 8 pieces of fabric all converging on that one little, it's not bad. It's not too bad. It's off a wee bit, a tiny bit, but most of you would be happy with that. I will be happy with that too. So now you have your pinwheel with 4 half square triangles, and that's the center of our block. Our second block, we're going to do 4 of these units, and so we're going to put the mustard and this little flower fabric together, right sides together. Accuracy is everything. Make sure they're lined up perfectly, and you're going to do a scant 1/4 inch. I say scant in my sleep, but I'm telling you that's very important, that you don't do a full-on 1/4 inch or even or larger. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a scant on this one. This is the easiest thing you'll do on the whole block. You won't have any trouble with this. The only thing you have to be mindful of is that the mustard is on the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and press to the mustard, to the dark color. So there it is, nice and ironed, and with my scant 1/4 inch done nicely. You'll need 4 of these, and here are my 4 units all ready to go. So we'll set that aside. And now we're going to go to the little one that's, I would say, a bit tricky. So we're going to be doing these 4 blocks. We'll do one right now, and they're the 4 corner blocks, and they get 4 2-inch squares sewn around all of them, and I'll show you what that looks like. So with your 3.5 inch block, you're going to take two 2-inch blocks and put them opposite, and then before or now you need to draw a line. This is important now. You need to draw a line from corner to corner, from corner to corner. Now this time you are going to sew not on the line, but just a hair to the outside, a wee little bit. If you sew right down on top of your line, it's going to pull too much as far as your toward your, you're not going to end up with a nice square. You'll see what I mean. It's hard to describe it. You'll see what I mean. So I am going to come over here, and I am going to make sure that I do not sew on that line, but to the right of it or to the outside of that line. So let's give that a go. So I'm making sure I'm not on that line, but very close to it. Okay. Now, I don't know if you can see very well, but I'm just to the right of that line. Now, why that's important is I'm going to fold this over. I'm going to iron this and make sure that it's still a perfect square on the ends right here. I probably should have shown you from drawing this line from corner to corner. You're just going to go ahead and lay your ruler down and make sure you're compensating for the width of your lead. So go ahead and use a pencil, draw down the center, and you'll get something. Is that a little more clear? You'll get something that looks like that. So after ironing it, you can see it's a perfect, it folds over perfectly. So before you go any further, let's go ahead and cut this about 1/4 inch or maybe even a little less. So when this folds over, it's perfectly square. That looks nice. Okay, on the opposite side, we're going to do this one more time. We are going to sew just to the outside or to the right of the line that we drew. Okay. Before we do anything else, let's check to make sure that it squares up nicely, and it does very, very nicely. It's not pulled this way, it's not hanging over, it's folded very nicely. Sometimes it's nice to even finger press this, and then we're ready to go to the iron. Again, I'm gonna fold this back, trim off to about 1/4 of an inch or a little bit less, and now my block looks like this. I am ready now to sew on, this fabric is actually the inside, and again, I'm gonna sew a line from corner to corner. So I'm gonna set that up, and I'm gonna sew directly over the other two, the little blocks that I already sewed on. Okay, so let's give this a go, making sure everything is really lined up nicely. And then I will sew not on that line, but just to the inside or to the right of it. And before I trim or do anything, I'm gonna make sure that it actually folds up nicely, that it is, and it does. I can see that it's just right. Okay, I'm gonna iron that real quickly. It'll just take a second. So it folded up beautifully and it's nice and square. And what I'm gonna do is trim this like I did the first two. Now, here's what you need to be careful and aware of. Right here, you wanna have 1/4 of an inch left over for your next seam allowance that will go on top of this. So make sure you have 1/4 of an inch there, 1/4 of an inch there, okay? Now, we have one more to do, and that is the outside, and we're going to lay that on top of the works and square it up real nicely. And again, sew askant and just to the right of our line that we drew. That one now, I might not have. We've gotten a wee bit too far away from the line, but we'll see. Let's finger press that over and see if it works, and it looks very nice. So I'm gonna iron that, and I'll be right back. Okay, again, I need to pull this back and trim it, and then our little block will be finished, and I need 4 of these units. Now that we're finished with our 1 pinwheel, and these 4 units right here are placed like that. This one goes like this. This one lays out like this. And then these 4 units that we just completed will be in the corners. So that one goes there, and this one goes here. This one goes right here, and this one right here. Now you can see you're ready to just sew these in rows, and then you'll sew those rows together. So at this point, we're going to sew these 3 units together in a row. So I will match these up, do my scant 1/4 of an inch. And now you need to be careful about how you're ironing things. The top 2 rows, and you look at your directions, but the top 2 rows and the top and the bottom need to be ironed away from the center. So in other words, this one right here, I'll go ahead and finger press first and then iron that to the outside, and then I will pick this one up and do the same thing, and I'm gonna iron it toward the outside. The seam will go toward the outside. Now I should mention, you're gonna go right across, you're gonna sew right across a little cross section, and let's see how well we do. We would like this point to come right to, without being sewn into the seam. So I could have even done a little deeper into that. This one, and we want them all to match, to all converge right to this point. Okay, and so I'll make sure that I'm ironing this to the outside. These will all get pressed to the outside, and that's important that you do that to the top row and the bottom row. And now I'll sew these 3 units together that go across the center. Scant 1/4 inch, and I'm ready to roll. Now this one gets ironed toward the center, toward the pinwheel. So we'll do that. And then for my last one, I'll sew that on as well. And of course that gets ironed toward the pinwheel, toward the center. Okay, ironed toward the pinwheel. And now we'll put our bottom row together. Fold that over. Do a nice small neat 1/4 inch, scant 1/4 inch. And I'm looking to try to go right through that spot where all the pieces come together. Sometimes you just have to practice on another piece so that's a hard thing to do. You've got 2 pieces here, 3 pieces here, and you want them to come together all at the same spot. And that takes a little bit of finessing, so practice up or just be ready to rip out if you don't like the way it looks. And once again, this piece is being ironed to the outsides, to the corner pieces. And our last piece for this row, we will line that up nicely. And sew this one. Okay. And then I'll get this one ironed to the outside toward and we'll be ready to sew these rows together. We're ready to sew all 3 of our rows together and our block will be done. Now, I'm going to fold this over, and here again, I need to make sure that these seams right here are nesting, which is why we sew those in opposite directions, the top and the bottom, and then the center. Those were ironed so they would nest nicely. So let's go ahead and put a pin there and make sure that this nests nicely, if you can see that. And then I'll put a pin here. And then we're ready to sew this together. Keep it scant, keep it less, a wee bit less than that 1/4 inch. At this point, it doesn't matter if you want to iron yours toward the center or toward the bottom. It looks like it wants to automatically go toward the bottom, so that's how I'll iron this. I'll take it to the ironing board and iron it over toward the bottom. So you can see that these 4 corners came together nicely. They're all lined up. And so the only thing I have left to do is the bottom. And then I'll fold this over, nest those 2 seams in the center, and we'll be ready to sew those. Last seam, yay! Now, if any of you have any problems or issues, bring this in. Jessica will talk to you about it, or if I'm there, I will certainly help you out. We want you to be successful. These are cute Lori Holt blocks, darling. So if you're having any issues, come in and see us. Okay, that was our last seam and we're ready to iron. So there's our completed block. Looks awesome. Love Lori Holt's fabric. Again, if you have any problems or issues, come in to So Much More. Jessica or I will be happy to help you out and go over any issues that you have. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed our first tutorial for our first block of the month. Thank you.